If you're new to sourdough and would like to learn what equipment is helpful in making delicious sourdough bread, then this video is for you. Hi, I'm Ron, and thanks for clicking on this video. For the next few minutes, I will be demonstrating the equipment I use when making and baking my 2-loaf recipe of sourdough bread. Okay then, let's get started. It's the night before the morning when I'll be mixing my sourdough. So, in preparation, I'll be feeding my starter tonight. I just took a jar of starter out of the fridge. Actually, I usually keep 2 or 3 jars of starter in the fridge at all times. I keep my starter in quart jars with plastic lids on tight when in the fridge. I keep my water in this bottled water container, my scales, silicone scraper. The flour I use to feed my starter I keep in this number 10 silver canister. I keep it in the freezer. I find it much more precise to weigh my ingredients and measure them by weight rather than measuring by volume with cups and spoons. My 2-loaf recipe calls for 200 grams of starter, so I'll feed this quart jar 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. I use the handle of a wooden spoon to mix my starter. I also use the same wooden spoon to mix my sourdough. If you've seen any of my old videos, you'll notice that in the past I've used a offset spatula to clean the inside of the quart jars, but recently I switched to these silicone scrapers, which I think do a better job. Although this jar is getting a bit messy, and I'll probably put the remaining starter in a clean quart jar after mixing the dough. Here's a close-up and speed-up of the same demonstration. I've long since used up the original 23 ounces of water in this bottled water container. The reason I love using this particular bottle is that it holds just over 700 grams of water, the perfect amount to feed my starter 100 grams of water and my 2-loaf sourdough recipe of 600 grams of water. I simply refill the bottle with filtered water from the spigot in my fridge door. It's the following morning and time to mix the sourdough. The starter has more than doubled in volume during the night and started to fall. The equipment I use to mix my sourdough consists of a 4-quart Pyrex bowl, with lid, my bottle of water and spray bottle, this ice cream tub, which contains bread flour, my wooden spoon. Oh, almost forgot my scales. Okay, I think we're ready. Not sure why I measured my starter's weight. I don't really need to do that. Okay, get the bowl in there. And we need 600 grams of water. And 200 grams of starter. I normally use a couple spoons to get the starter out of the quart jar. I do that to keep the jar from getting too messy, but I've already decided I'm going to move the remaining starter into a new clean quart jar, so I'll just go ahead and pour out what I need, which is 200 grams. Okay, close enough. Now normally, if this jar was cleaner, I would just put the lid on it tight, put it straight back into the fridge for days or even weeks until I use it again. Actually, I am going to put it in the fridge temporarily, but I'll be moving that starter into a clean jar here in a few minutes. Okay, where's my wooden spoon? One thing you can do to speed the process up a little bit before you add the starter, you can put your bowl of water in the microwave for a minute, and that'll raise the temperature a bit from room temperature up to about 90 degrees. But I don't remember to do that very often. I use a 1-cup measuring cup to scoop out my bread flour, and I leave the measuring cup in the tub with the flour. I need 900 grams. Whoops, I'm a little over. Okay, perfect. And some fine sea salt. And this is just about the most time-consuming part. That's mixing the dough. No matter how much mixing I do, there always seems to be a little bit of flour in the bottom of the bowl that refuses to get hydrated. Well, that's where a few extra grams of water helpful, as well as spraying a mist onto the flour with my spray bottle. I like using this little bench scraper with curved corners. It allows me to clean off my wooden spoon handle as well as scrape the sides of the bowl. One more squirt of mist, cover it with the lid, and we begin the bulk fermentation process. Here's a close-up and speed up of the same demonstration. I like using the Pyrex 4-quart bowl for mixing my sourdough, but many people find using a straight walled container like this one easier to measure the 50% rise during bulk fermentation. Here's the leftover starter from today's sourdough mixing. I placed the leftover starter in a clean quart jar. It will now go unfed into the fridge for days or even weeks until fed again to make sourdough bread. I buy my flour, which is milled by Lehigh Mills in Lehigh, Utah, from Costco in 25-pound bags. 25 pounds of flour fit perfectly into 2 ice cream tubs. Blue lids for bread flour, red lids for all-purpose flour. I buy the tubs from a local ice creamery for $1, and that includes the lid. Here is my workbench, which I use for flour items such as biscuits, pie crust, bread dough, etc. The lip at each end of the board keeps it securely in place. I cover my workbench with a towel when not in use. Bench scrapers are valuable tools, and you'll see me using them continually. I use the Broad & Taylor proofing box for my sourdough during bulk fermentation, and I sometimes use it for my sourdough starter as well. I purchased mine several years ago for $150, and they now cost well over $200, which seems very expensive. But if mine wore out, I'd probably buy another one. An alternative to the proofing box is the microwave oven, which I have used and it does work. Don't actually turn on the microwave oven, but put a cup of boiling water in the microwave with your sourdough starter or sourdough and shut the door. These are Danish dough whisks. I own 2 of them. I've used them to mix my sourdough. I've tried to like them, but I don't. I much prefer the handle of a wooden spoon. I only picture them here because many people use them. The purpose of this video is to focus on sourdough equipment, and so I didn't show any of the 4 hours of bulk fermentation, the stretch and fold, coil fold, proofing, and the 50% rise. However, I do have a video on my YouTube channel that demonstrates that. Okay, bulk fermentation is over. The sourdough has risen 50% in volume, and it's time to shape the sourdough. I begin by sprinkling or sifting some all-purpose flour on my workbench. Next, I'll take my 4-quart bowl and simply tip it upside down, and the dough falls right out, leaving behind practically a dough-free bowl. Okay, here's a close-up of the same demonstration. The dough falls right out. I just love that 4-quart bowl. My recipe is for 2 loaves. It's easier for me to make 2 loaves than it is for 1 loaf. So I begin by sifting a little flour right across the top, so when I cut my dough in half, it won't stick to my bench scraper. But I have a confession here. I think I'm the world's worst at dividing dough equally, and so I weigh it to ensure both loaves are of equal size, and this time is no exception. One is 100 grams heavier than the other, so I need to take 50 grams off one and add it to the other. I've been off as much as 200 grams. Okay, so put that there and that there. Now we got 2 loaves. My loaves are about 880 grams a piece. Okay, here's a close-up of the same thing. I rarely put anything on my workbench. Certainly would normally not put scales on my workbench. I'm only doing it here to give you a better view for the camera. There, now we have 2 loaves, same size. Okay, I've shaped the dough into 2 round loaves called boules. Let it rest. And now for the final shaping. I prefer to shape them oblong, what's sometimes called a batard, and let them cold ferment in a banneton. And that's what I'm demonstrating here. You don't have to have a banneton. Any bowl will work, but I do like to use the banneton. And I've folded the dough in half, seam side up. I'll cover this with a plastic shower cap. It'll go into the fridge for 1 to 3 days for cold fermentation to develop flavor. But to illustrate, any bowl will work. Let me get some parchment paper here, cut it in half, and I'll demonstrate using a bowl. Since the bowl is round, this piece of dough will be shaped round. And shape the dough, create some surface tension, place it on the parchment paper, and then crisscross it with another piece of parchment paper and my bowl. This is a mixing bowl that we have had in our family, I'll bet close to 50 years. I'll cover it with a plastic shower cap as well, place it in the fridge, and we'll bake this dough tomorrow morning. Artisan bread, including sourdough bread, is usually baked at a very high temperature, often around 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Behind me in this picture, you'll see a baker's oven, which has steam injectors. These are called deck ovens. After placing the dough into the oven, a button is pushed and steam is released into the oven. This is done to soften the crust of the dough so it will remain soft and allowed to rise. If the crust of the dough was not moistened, the high heat in the oven would harden the outside of the dough too fast, preventing the dough from rising. Steam in a professional baking oven is replicated in one of two ways for the home baker. For the home baker who bakes their artisan bread on a pizza stone or baking sheet, a separate pan containing water and/or ice is placed in the kitchen oven to generate steam. For the home baker using a Dutch oven or any other enclosed vessel, no water or ice needs to be added inside the Dutch oven, as the enclosed vessel captures the moisture already in the sourdough from escaping. Some home bakers, myself included, will sometimes spray a watery mist onto the dough just before placing the dough into the Dutch oven. It's morning number 2 and time to bake the sourdough. My 5-quart cast iron Dutch ovens have been preheating in the kitchen oven at 450 degrees for about an hour. I've used gloves in the past to protect my hands, but I really like using these mittens the best. So we just grab the parchment paper, lift it out of the bowl, into the Dutch oven. With scissors, I cut one stripe right across the center of the top of the dough. We turn the lid and place the Dutch oven back in the oven. Okay, for the other loaf, which was cold fermenting in the fridge in a banneton, we need a little mat, silicone mat here to hold it while we get it out of the banneton. So we just place it on top, flip it over, and it pops right out. And with a razor blade, I'll make a cut right across the top. I should have left it there on the side. It had a better view, but you get the idea. One deep slice right across the top. Okay, in the Dutch oven, put on my mittens. Put the lid on. And into the kitchen oven. This also is a Lodge 5-quart cast iron Dutch oven, and if I was only baking one loaf at a time, this is the Dutch oven I would use because the loop handle makes it easier to remove the handle. However, I usually bake 2 loaves at a time, and because of that, I like using the Lodge 5-quart Dutch oven with the flat lid. The sourdough is finished baking with the lid on. It's time now to finish baking the sourdough with the lid off. But isn't that bread beautiful? And here's the other loaf. Wow, isn't that beautiful? The bread is finished baking and it's time to check the temperature. Anything over 200 is good. 203 and 206. Perfect. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful and make it a great day.